I was wrong. Yeah, I'm sorry. To be completely transparent, when Andor was first announced, I wasn't just hesitant, I was completely uninterested. I had no desire to watch the show. Now, don't get me wrong, I absolutely love Rogue One. Okay, it wasn't about the characters. Rogue One is top 3 Star Wars movie for me. But given that we know exactly when, where, and how Cassian Andor dies, I didn't think there was anything that we could tell in this story that would be interesting. But like I said, I was wrong. Andor is the best Disney show that we've gotten. It's better than The Mandalorian. While I may enjoy The Mandalorian a little bit more, I am a sucker for Mandalore and anything related. On a quality spectrum, Andor blows this out of the water. So, how does Andor outperform shows that have longtime fan favorite characters like Obi-Wan Kenobi and the Book of Boba Fett? Everywhere you look, Andor is the better show. If you look at Rotten Tomatoes, Letterboxd, Metacritic, IMDb, by both critics and audiences, Andor blows them out of the water. Now, I probably shouldn't even be telling you this, but I didn't even finish Obi-Wan Kenobi. I still have one episode left. And I just don't care. Will I get around to it eventually? Maybe. But Obi-Wan and the Book of Boba Fett are both pretty bad. They're not good shows at all. In fact, if they weren't Star Wars, they'd be awful. Now, Andor has a lot going for it, and it does a lot of things really well. But I want to focus on 4 things that I found stood out to me particularly well. The first is it gives us a reason to watch. The second, it expands on the Star Wars universe rather than constraining it. The third, we've got compelling characters. And the fourth, the unique storytelling structure that we get in this show. Point number 1, it gives us a reason to watch. Unlike the other Disney Star Wars projects, Andor actually gives us a reason to be invested. Obi-Wan Kenobi focuses on Obi-Wan and Leia. And while that was initially a cool idea, the whole idea is, oh, will Obi-Wan save Leia? Gee, I don't know. I'm on the edge of my seat. What's gonna happen? The Book of Boba Fett has so little going for it that they had to turn it into The Mandalorian season 2.5. It's such a snooze fest. Now, when faced with the opportunity to join the rebellion, Andor swerves hard. Hold up. The Cassian that we know is committed to the cause. He's dedicated. He's been in this fight since he was 6 years old, or whatever that quote is. So how does he join the rebellion? How do we go from the Andor we're presented with at the beginning of the show to the Andor we get in Rogue One? What is the development? There's a reason to watch. There's unknowns. Second point, expanding the Star Wars universe. I'm going to get a lot of flack for this, but it just has to be said. I am growing to despise the Skywalker era, the saga era, this time zone. I have been wanting new stories from Star Wars for a really long time. And it isn't because I dislike the stories of the Skywalker saga. It's because apparently there's only 6 families during this time period that are influential or matter at all to the destiny of what's going to happen. Everyone's related, and only those people are important. That's not the case in Andor, though. In Andor, we only visit 1, maybe 2 other characters that are already established that we know. And of those 1 or 2, we don't know a whole lot about them. Like 98% of the cast are new characters. And we'll get to that in a second when we talk about characters, but it's one of the things that I love the most about this show. One of the best things about Andor is we're finally able to get a glimpse inside of the Empire and how they go about doing things. We see the ISB and we see the prisons. We see the politicking going around in the workplace, the empirical workplace. And that was one of my absolute favorite parts of this show. Being able to see things that are new to the Star Wars universe is what keeps people interested. Moving on to point 3, compelling characters. This is likely where Andor thrives the most. On paper, The size of this cast should not work at all. There are so many side characters, it's kind of ridiculous. I can't tell you the names of all the side characters. Some of them are only in it for a few episodes. But we have 4 protagonists that we follow, and they hardly even interact with each other. What's impressive is even the side characters are pretty complex and they have a lot of personality. Even the ones that are in it for only a couple episodes, you would expect to be pretty stale, but they're not. They're deep. They've got great motivations and they have great chemistry with the other characters on the screen. I think that the characters in this show are absolutely carried by amazing performances by the entire cast. I want to briefly touch on some of my favorite characters. Andor. While, ironically, Andor isn't my favorite character in the show, I do want to recognize that we got a morally gray protagonist out of this show, and it was a lot of fun. It kept me guessing throughout the show. Nemik. Nemik for me, I love Nemik so much. Nemik for me demonstrates how real the rebellion is, finally. Nemik is so beautifully out of place in the Garrison raid that it really demonstrates his desperation as well as his conviction. Up until this point, all the members of the rebellion that we've seen have been people like Cassian. They're fighters. They're soldiers, maybe some politicians like Mon Mothma. Nemik isn't a fighter by nature. He's a poet. He's a philosopher. You can see that in the way that he speaks. And it's in times of war that those who often wouldn't ordinarily enlist in the cause do. And Nemik demonstrates this point really well. Kino. Kino was easily the most surprising character for me, and he reiterates the fact that I don't think there's such thing as a bad Andy Serkis performance. Like Nemik, Kino only appears through one mini arc in the show, and there's more to come on that later. His ideology revolves around freedom from captivity. While he initially comes off as ignorant and maybe even a little conformative with the system in the prison, this is because you can tell he truly believes that good performance and behavior among his team is the best way to get them released the quickest. Any deviation from this norm will result in extended sentences and possible beatings. Keep your head low and go unnoticed. When it becomes clear that that freedom is not on the table, Kino's approach changes drastically. Luthen. Now, Luthen is really interesting because he's the thread that ties the whole show together. And he is by far the most interesting character in the show. If you think differently, you're wrong. During this time of the early rebellion, Luthen seems to be the only kind of outward and active member of the rebellion. There also seems to be no real command structure to the rebellion yet. Yes, there is some organization. That's one of the big themes of the show. But Luthen seems to have taken that mantle upon himself in organizing and connecting individuals and groups to accomplish these larger tasks. The most interesting aspect of Luthen is his morality and self-reflection. We see this in his beautiful monologue that he delivers on that bridge on Coruscant. This is a man who knows he does terrible things. This is a man who leaves no loose ends. This is a man who makes impossible decisions. This is a man who doesn't see the value of life, but that's by choice. He's done this because for the rebellion to succeed, somebody has to look past it. This is a man who has willingly chosen to carry the horrors of the rebellion so that others can stand for what they really hope to accomplish. Point 4. The unique storytelling structure of this show is something that I absolutely loved. This has a structure of what I'm calling 4 chunks of 3 episode arcs. Now, if you're not familiar with an arc, the best way I would describe it is it's like a mini story told within the stories. Episodes 1 through 3 are what I call the independence arc. This is where Andor is obviously independent. He's off looking for his sister, and he's trying to escape from the security force that is after him. And he does a lot of that independently. He's trying to escape and be alone. Episodes 4 through 6 I refer to as the Rebellion arc, with Andor raiding the Imperial garrison with the Rebel Alliance members. Pretty fitting. Episodes 7 through 9 I call the imprisonment arc. This is obviously where Andor is in prison. And episodes 10 through 12 I call the freedom arc. Not only does Andor break free in this arc, but he also learns a lot about the rebellion, and that it's about more than just resistance, it's about breaking free. Now, for as much hype as I'm giving this show, it is not a perfect project by any means. Let's talk about some of my gripes with the show. The first one would probably be the flashbacks at the beginning of the show. We get a lot of them, they're kind of long, and a lot of them are a little unnecessary. It's kind of nice to see where he came from and his background, but I don't think it adds a whole lot to the rest of the show. The point that pains me most to talk about is probably the finale. The finale fell a bit flat for me. It felt more like the end of an episode than the end of a season or the end of a series for me. I feel like there were so many characters in the show that ended with little or no closure at all for most of them. I understand that the show might have been wanting to leave things open for a possible future season. That brings me to my next point. This really isn't an Andor show. It's a rebellion show that is wrapped around Andor to bring in audiences. They wanted something familiar to bring people in. Some of these characters stick around a little too long as well, in my opinion. Cyril Karn's character was not influential in any way past episode 4. He didn't have any developmental role to play other than saving Deidre briefly. I would have cut his character after episode 4. I know a lot of people enjoyed his character, but his continual screen time had me thinking he would play a much larger role in the final 2 episodes, and he just didn't. Moving on to our rating of the show. On a quality scale, I give Andor a solid 8. It's a really good show. I had this initially a little bit higher, but as I talked about with the finale, it fell a little flat, and that did take some points off for me. Overall, though, on the enjoyment scale, I give it an 8.7. I am a sucker for Star Wars at the end of the day, and I really do just like Star Wars, especially when it's good Star Wars. Anyways, I've done a lot of talking about the show, but I would love to know what you guys think of Andor if you've seen it. If you've seen it, let me know what you think. What are your favorite characters? What are your favorite moments from the show? And what project from Star Wars are you most looking forward to coming up? For me, it's The Acolyte. I'm really interested to see a new time era and a new perspective for Star Wars. Thank you so much for watching the video, guys. If you liked the video, please hit the like button. Comment down below, like I said before. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. I love Star Wars. I hope to make a lot more Star Wars content in the future. But anything just TV and film related in general, maybe some book stuff in the future, I absolutely love to talk about. Make sure you're subscribed to stick around for more content like this, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.